let's get into this.
So folks getting mad at me for talking trash on Girl Is Mine. Sorry, that song blows. My bad.
I mean, look, hey,
it's not to my sensibilities.
Taste is subjective. I don't mind the song. I've never been a big Beatles fan, so Paul McCartney's voice in general is not something that I run to. So,
well, that's not exactly the best era of Paul McCartney either. But anyway, whatever.
Say. I think it's a great song.
I mean,
it comes out the same year. It comes out in '82.
When does Paul McCartney when coming up? What year is that?
I believe that's this year. I believe he released a record this year. But let me get into this monologue real quick. Welcome to today's episode where we journey back to the year 1982, a pivotal year in music history. This was a time when genres were in flux, new sounds were emerging, and the music industry was undergoing significant transformations. We'll explore the coming into disco, the rise of heavy metal and hip hop, and some fascinating developments in Japanese music. We'll also examine the political climate of the time, the impact of MTV and music videos, and the exclusion of artists of color from this new visual medium. By 1982, the disco craze had dominated the late 70s. It was waning. Backlash against disco, epitomized by events like the infamous Disco Demolition Night in 1979, had taken its toll. While disco's influence lingered in pop and dance music, it was clear that the genre's heyday was over. Artists who had ridden the disco wave began to either evolve their sound or fade from the spotlight. Heavy metal was on the ascent, with bands like Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, and Ozzy Osbourne leading the charge. The genre's aggressive sound and rebellious spirit resonated with a generation looking for something more intense than what mainstream rock offered. Metal's rise was a part of a broader movement towards harder, more complex music, also included punk and hard rock. Hip-hop was beginning to gain traction while still primarily an underground movement. 1982 saw the release of seminal tracks that would lay the groundwork for the genre's explosion in the mid-80s. Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, The Message, was a groundbreaking track that highlighted the social issues facing inner-city communities, proving that hip-hop was a powerful new voice in music. In Japan, the music scene was vibrant and innovative. Artists like Yellow Magic Orchestra were blending electronic music with pop, creating sounds that were ahead of their time. Meanwhile, something I discovered in making this playlist, city pop, a genre that combined jazz, funk, and R&B, was becoming popular. Japanese musicians were not only pushing the boundaries of traditional genres, but also influencing global music trends. The early 80s were marked by significant political and social changes in the United States. President Ronald Reagan's administration was characterized by conservative policies, economic changes, and a strong stance against the Soviet Union. The Cold War was still a dominant force in global politics, affecting cultural and artistic expressions around the world. Economic policies were shifting towards deregulation and tax cuts, which had mixed impacts on different segments of society. In the UK, Margaret Thatcher's government was implementing neoliberal economic policies, leading to significant social and economic changes. These policies sparked resistance and protests from various groups, including labor unions and youth movements, which were often reflected in the music of the time. MTV launched in August, that's the year I was born, 1981, the month I was born in 77, revolutionizing the music industry by making music videos as a crucial part of an artist's success. The visual aspect of music became as important as the sound, changing how artists promote their music and connecting with fans. Videos like Michael Jackson's Billie Jean and Duran Duran's Hungry Like the Wolf became iconic, setting new standards for production and creativity. However, MTV faced criticism for its lack of diversity. Early on, the network primarily featured white rock artists, excluding many artists of color, primarily in genres like R&B and hip-hop. This exclusion was symptomatic of broader racial biases in the music industry. It wasn't until Michael Jackson's breakthrough that MTV began more regularly featuring Black artists, a shift largely driven by the massive popularity of the undeniable talent of Michael Jackson. 82 was a transformative year in the music, marked by the decline of disco, the rise of heavy metal and hip-hop, and innovative contributions from Japanese artists. So, that being said,
I got an addendum to that because, and this is, you're not going to get every genre, right? But this was an absolutely groundbreaking year for punk as well. You had Descendants, Milo Goes to College, Fear the Record, Flipper, Generic Flipper, Missioner Burma, Versus, Bad Brains, the self-titled Bad Brains, Junkyard by The Birthday Party, Plastic Surgery Disasters, Dead Kennedys, Born Innocent, Red Cross, Everything Went Black, Black Flag. I mean, not even getting into new wave stuff, like the name of the band is Talking Heads, which is not their biggest record, but it is absolutely a rock solid year for punk rock as well. And so I think it's easy to get lost in that when you think about the larger cultural cachet, nice, of heavy metal and the just the cultural dominance of disco that's just on its way out for what I'm sure we'll discuss is largely like racist and homophobic reasons. But you also have Landmark Records by The Damned. You have X Under the Big Black Sun. You have The Cure, Pornography. Like there's a lot of stuff happening in the underground as well. So it's momentous on almost every genre of music that we cover on this show. It's pretty remarkable. Like any one of those, like even if it was just generic Flipper or just Junkyard by Birthday Party or just My Logo's of College by Descendants, who unfortunately most of what the Descendants wrought, I do not care for at all. But that is no one will argue because they more or less, them and the Buzzcocks are kind of to blame for pop punk, and that's a rough thing to hang on someone. but Milo Goes to College, even so, I know people that are like, pop punk is the worst thing in the world, is a pox on humanity, and they listen, but Milo Goes to College fucks. That's a great record. Yes, of course it is, because it's objectively a great record. And a lot of what made that a great record is because it's Descendants, not because they were trying to take the danger out of it. It does sound like dangerous music done by, again, going to use the term I used for the 1001 album complaints guys, baffling squares, which is one of the reasons why it was so punk rock, because it wasn't like they were cool guys, But anyway, we're not talking about specifically Milo Goes to College. I just want to shout out specifically what a fantastic year, because I was just looking at I wonder what punk rock records came out that year. My man, Bad Brains. The self-titled Bad Brains record. Jesus Christ, that was like a grenade in the room for punk rock.
If you look at the thumbnail for the show, I actually created it.
Oh, I know, it's in the playlist. It's in the thumbnail.
Those are all the albums that I wanted to show,
but it wasn't in the intro, and that's why I was choosing to bring it up. Because there's so much pounding stuff to keep track of with this, So getting back to, we might as well start with Thriller, because I think some of the more interesting facts about the arrangements for that record is Michael, who was very forward thinking and knew what his strengths were, had them change the arrangements for certain parts to be longer. So he's like, no, I want that to be longer so I can dance.
Did you ever hear the demos to some of that stuff? It's him going,
he's like humming it out. He's doing the thing. Bjornford does the same thing. He'll he's not a musician, but he has the music in his head, and he has to get it out and to translate it for the musicians. But I just want to reiterate, I think it's how funny that some of those arrangements are longer, because he knew visually in the videos that he's going to be doing cool dancing, and that's one of the things in his toolbox that he's really good at that's going to make this work. How forward thinking is that? Because think about the moonwalk. Yes. Right? I mean, you can't argue, as great as the record is and as great as Michael Jackson is, good Lord, if that was can you think of another dance from our generation that
cultural moment? Can we talk about cultural moments? The Motown 50-year anniversary, was it 50 year or 30 year? It's 84 they do that. But that moment where he does the moonwalk, and mind you, we had seen it before on Soul Train.
Sure.
When the dude from Shalimar did it. That's what
showed absolutely.
Yeah. But that's fine. That's Soul Train. Not as many people are watching it, and it wasn't Michael Jackson doing the move. I get that. My point is, there's these cultural moments that we forget because we don't really have them anymore, right? You always talk about the monoculture. And I don't know anyone, and granted, I'm from Richmond, California. You're from the Central Valley. We're from about 150 miles apart, at least. Maybe about 100 miles apart.
Maybe 100.
The next day at school, what was everybody talking about?
Everybody's right. Whoa, did you see that? Everybody. And so if you pair that and that kind of cultural cachet to reach people with fantastic music as well, and someone who's a born performer, born into it, right? As we were discussing earlier, that it was inescapable. And how could that not be a hit? How could that not be it? And but I also just want to reiterate how smart it is for Michael Jackson to like know, hey, I need that to be longer. What? Why? Because I'm going to be doing like this other thing that is going to like blow people's minds. Like he knew somehow, like he knew that would connect. Did he know it was going to be the biggest thing in the world? I don't know. Maybe he's a weird dude, but I just find that so fantastic. And just the idea of like pushing the idea of what a music video can be. Again, getting Vincent Price and like basically make it a little horror movie that look, to this day, for the longest time, so if you're in a conversation about zombies, at some point people are gonna go like, do the thing. They're gonna do the thing with Thriller every goddamn time. I do the same thing. It's so iconic, and you're like, yo, there are synchronized zombies like doing like a cool dance, like amazing.
And that video scared me as a little kid.
Oh, it was, and you look at
we were like 6.
Goofball stuff, but it is terrifying when you saw that as a kid.
When Michael Jackson turns around with the eyes.
Yeah.
That was
yeah.
That was
which is wild to think about now. But again, we're talking about those monocultural, cultural cachet moments. It's the reason why it's like just became this like timeless one of. I mean, that's one of the biggest records in the ever selling records ever, right? If I remember right.
Yes. Yes. It was. What's interesting to me about that, and we can get on to more records, is if you
70 million copies, 70 million copies.
Is that just domestically? That's just domestically.
Worldwide.
Okay.
So it's the best selling album of all time.
That record, when you listen to it, is this record where they're pushing certain boundaries. So you're going to get the new R&B, which is a slightly slower disco, right?
Yeah,
it's a very danceable record. Yeah. But it's also a very rocking record. And I'm not just talking about Eddie Van Halen solo.
Dude, Beat It is a rock song. Straight up. It's a good one, too.
The strategic nature of Michael and Quincy to be able to say, how do we make this song rock enough that we can get on multiple radio stations with this?
It's amazing.
Again, go listen to Off the Wall. A lot of people go, I love Off the Wall more because there is no rock elements to Off the Wall.
Yeah.
It's a very good R&B, again, end of disco record. Go put on Thriller. Thriller itself is a rocking song. But that bass line makes you want to dance on Thriller.
Yeah, it's doing both.
Right? But when you listen to a song like Beat It, and then you find out that basically Toto was the backing band for a lot of this.
I forgot about that. Yeah,
so that's why I don't like people that are like, "Oh, these studio musicians." I've never really liked all that talk because it's like, look, man, these guys are really good at what they do, and they made a masterpiece of a record. So why are you shitting on this masterpiece?
Yeah, man. By the way, I would do that in a heartbeat. Like I'm down. But just the caveat is that I do my thing, and that's certainly not what Toto does. And I think you have to be a little bit more of a chameleon than I am to really be an effective Wrecking Crew style studio musician.
I don't know if you ever watch.
I'm a great arranger, though. By the way,
I don't know if you ever watched Steve Lukather's interview he did with Rick Beato.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's an interesting interview because he was there for like the Asia sessions with Steely Dan.
Yeah.
And he's also a big part of, he is playing the rhythm. Eddie only played the lead. That's why Eddie says, I came in 15 minutes. It's like a one take thing and he left.
He doesn't even freaking like
bring his
and where he comes in is like the weirdest. And apparently there's like some thumping sound that was like someone like knocking on the booth to be like, hey, go, it's time. Let's go, man. And so like that's why like if you actually listen to it like as a musician or like microanalyze it, he kind of comes in, he kind of drags and then he comes in and it just sounds like he's just doing a cool aesthetic choice. But yeah, I guess he was just like, what now? Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, like I think it's like 1 or 2 takes, right? There's like no punching in. But it's Lukather that's changing the song. Him and Michael are playing it because like you said originally it didn't have a certain it's Beat It is do. I think it was a little faster.
Yeah.
And they slow it down a little bit because it's more metal. And Quincy's telling Lukather, like, look, dude, this is too hard.
It's going too far. Right.
You're going too far with this.
But he's right because it appeals to it's a song that like if you're a hard rocker, like that one's good, like, but it doesn't go so far that it's gonna lose the groove, right?
That's the song. That's the album for me that I find out who Van Halen is, and I become a Van Halen.
Oh, which is
that
crazy because what comes out this year?
Diver
Diver Down. Which is
What song did I use from Diver Down? I don't remember. Let's do this fun thing that I love doing with you, which is share the playlist because you have insights on some of these that I don't have.
sure.
I'll make it bigger. Shut up.
Write your own joke.
So I started off with Human Nature. I didn't know which Michael Jackson song, but that's one of those songs where I think there's no bass line in that song.
You might be right. Yeah. No, I mean that one's good. It's you know, to me it reminds me of the the mix that I made of and we talked about this when we did whatever year that was.
79.
No, for Soundgarden.
Uh-huh.
The Super Unknown, like it's so long, they put so many songs on it, but they're all so great. 94 that I made a mix that's like No Black Hole Sun,
Yeah.
No Spoon Man, and it's still a killer record. Every song, like it's like, God damn, this is so good. So like you totally do the same thing with Thriller. Thriller's not as long as Super Unknown. Let's be clear, that's a 80s record versus 90s record. But like I forget, like Human Nature is not a song that the first one I think of, but I like that's on here because of course, man, like Beat It and Thriller are like in people's DNA. They're just in the zeitgeist.
Yes.
They're like people don't even know anything about. You could go to someone in like Malaysia in like a rice field, and they'd be like, "Oh yeah, Michael Jackson," you know, Beat It.
My kid knows Michael Jackson, right? He's been dead longer than my kid's been alive.
Exactly.
And then we go The Cure,
Pornography, which again, The Cure is a niche band for as far as monoculture goes, but if you're talking about the stuff that has cachet within the world of independent music and punk rock, post-punk, etc., goth, this is where The Cure starts to make that turn, right? Because you have these songs that are like, I used when I was making Dark Passengers, I used Pornography, the record, and let's not take it out of context, folks, as a template for like, hey, these songs are going to take as long as they need to do what they need, because 100 years on that song, right, on that album, look at the runtime, 6 minutes 41 seconds.
Yeah,
that's the opening track, folks. That's the opening. And
there is a difference with these 80s records, because I think the last year we did was 94, right? And before we did 94 was 67. And what's interesting to me about 67 is the album format is album as artwork, right? So it's taking artists 3 or 4 songs to get into something that might move a little bit more because they can be so experimental.
Yes.
And in 82, we have a format. We need to get into the hook after 16 bars,
right? Don't bore us, get to the chorus, right?
There's definitely, you can feel the formats, right? You can definitely feel it with a lot of this music that I was finding. So when there's a few artists that were still being experimental, which I found interesting, which this new video element really plays into, because you can be a little bit more experimental because you have the element of video instead of you're sitting in your car, you're waiting for the hook to come in.
Well,